3 weeks ago, my parents served me and my boyfriend with civil protection orders that got dropped yesterday, so now that that's all taken care of and wrapped up, let me tell you how it went. So quick recap, if you're new to this, I'm the oldest of 11. My parents isolated me and my siblings from contact with anyone outside of the house growing up. Me and a brother got out in 2020 and were immediately cut off, and me and my boyfriend have gotten creative in our attempts to try to reach my 9 younger siblings who are still there. So on June 2nd, a detective went to my parents' house to check on my siblings, specifically the 4 of them who are adults, because of concerns that have been brought up. And I had nothing to do with that. I had actually talked to this exact same detective a year ago, and she told me there was nothing she could do. But even though I had nothing to do with that, that was what prompted them to go and file these protection orders, was that visit from the detective. Because if they could just make me go away, then nobody is ever going to be concerned about the situation again, obviously. So we get served these on the 3rd, and they're each 15 pages, give or take, of nonsense. So we went to an attorney immediately, and he looked at it, he laughed, he said there's no way a judge grants this. But he played along and wanted to help us in making sure that this went away. So the first thing my parents did was underestimate me. My grandpa was telling everyone in the family that they were saying that they didn't think I was going to show up for the hearing. They didn't think that I had an attorney. They didn't think they needed an attorney. They thought it was going to be so easy for them. The first thing we did was subpoena my 4 adult siblings to show up for this hearing. My dad is the petitioner on the filing, but in reality, all of the events that he described in the petition were attempts at contact with these 4 adults, and they are the witnesses to it and better to speak on it, so they need to be at the hearing. And my dad tried to argue with the process server when they were serving them. They tried to go to the courthouse to get them dropped, and my mom even answered the phone when my attorney called them to make sure that they had gotten served the subpoenas, and he said that she was telling him off about how inappropriate it was to subpoena them. So the morning the 12th came, we drove in from out of town, got all dressed up, showed up with an attorney, got there plenty early, and we're just waiting in the hallway outside of the courtroom for our time. And then my dad shows up. My mom didn't come. It was just my dad and these 4 siblings, and he had a police officer escort him past me in the hallway in a courtroom. So that's how big and strong and brave my dad is he needed a police officer to walk past me in the hallway in a courtroom. So that was funny. The other funny thing was he was dressed pretty casually, and then he brought with him a plastic bag, like a plastic grocery sack with all of his evidence in it, which I would assume is just like my letters and notes and a paper airplane. But came in with this plastic grocery bag, goes into the courtroom, gets them to put my siblings in a separate little room so that they couldn't sit in the courtroom and watch all of it, and puts this plastic bag on the table and is ready to go. So then we go into the courtroom and we're sitting there, and there's 2 hearings before ours that are super quick, and then it gets to our turn, and the judge asks us if we're being represented by an attorney, and we're like, yep, here's our attorney. And there's a little confusion because he's from out of town, so they had to kind of get that sorted out because the judge didn't know who he was. And then he goes to my dad and he says, are you being represented by an attorney? And my dad was like, no. And then the judge says, okay, well, since they showed up with an attorney and you did not, you can continue this for 2 weeks and come back with an attorney if you want to. And my dad's like, no, that's not necessary. He wanted to do this all by himself. So the next thing the judge does is he says, well, I'm going to hear these, because it's technically 2 cases. It's 2 protection orders, one for me, one for my boyfriend. And he says, I'm going to hear these together because the facts are very similar, just to be efficient. And my dad is immediately like, I object. And the judge's like, for why? And the judge does not seem amused. He seems very no nonsense, just wants to get this over with. He has a whole roster of them to get through for the day. And my dad was like, kind of going back and forth with him on it though, and was like, well, he's not related to me, and these are 2 separate cases, and da. And then the judge was like, okay, but that sounds like an inefficient use of our time, so can we just hear them together? And my dad was finally like, okay, fine. So then we get started, and the judge reads to my dad what he needs to prove to get a civil protection order granted, since he was representing himself. And my dad was like, okay, sounds good. And then the judge said, okay, so did you bring any witnesses with you today? And that immediately threw my dad off, and he was like, no, I have these all these CPS calls that have been made against me and everything that's been in the filing that you have in front of you. I also tried to get these subpoenas for my kids dropped, and the judge was like, okay, but the filing got us to here, the stuff in your petition got us to here, but here today you need to prove this, and this to get a civil protection order granted. And then my dad was like, oh, they didn't tell me that. And he's like, I guess I do need an attorney then. So I want to continue it for 2 weeks. And the judge asked my attorney, okay, are you good with continuing this for 2 weeks? Any objections to that? And my attorney was like, yes, because it sounds like what he is trying to go do is get 2 weeks to gather more evidence because you just dismissed his CPS calls. And he's had plenty of time to prepare for this. He's the one who filed it. He could have gotten an attorney. And my dad interrupts him while he's saying this, interrupts my attorney, and the judge snaps at him to not interrupt. And then after that, it was just, my dad was like, okay, well, I want an attorney. And so we got rescheduled for 2 weeks out. We get up, as we're leaving the courtroom, we realize that the detective that I had talked to a year ago and that had visited my parents' house the week before was actually sitting in the back of the courtroom the whole time. And she pulled us aside when we got out and started talking to us, and she was like apologizing over and over again, saying, I have to give you this, and it was trespass orders for my parents' property, and so we can't go back on their property for a year. And so that was their real gotcha moment, is catch us while in the courtroom to trespass us from their property. And we got to talk to the detective for a bit about what she's been doing, and that was really good. And then one of the bailiffs comes out, it's like, you guys need to go to this room or go outside if you're going to stand here and talk, because they had to, my dad didn't want to walk past us in the hallway again, so they made us leave so that they could get the police officer to escort them back out to their van. And then we all went home. And then we were planning to come back again this Friday. That was when the continuance was scheduled, so we were going to actually have our hearing on Friday. And then on Tuesday, the subpoenas got served for this new hearing for my siblings, and this time we added my mom. We didn't expect my mom to not come the first time, so then we wanted to make sure she came the second time because she was an important witness to one of the events my dad tried to describe in the filing. So we subpoenaed her, and then that was the breaking point, I guess. And I have a good feeling that my dad did not want my mom in court, because that would not have helped his case at all. She would have been hysterical, she would have been just a mess, and it would not have gone well for them. So I guess that was the breaking point for his argument, where he was probably never going to get an attorney. He had no actual evidence. We didn't really even need witnesses because we had video footage of every interaction that he described in the protection order, and it happened very differently in real life versus what he described. And we were prepared with those videos, we were prepared with everything we needed. So it's actually kind of disappointing that it was disappointing. The attorney was bummed, I was bummed that we weren't going to get to go and argue this in person. But it's good that it got dropped, because that was the outcome we were ready for anyway, prepared for anyway. My attorney said he would have bet his life savings that the judge would have never granted this. So it's been an exciting couple of weeks.